In 1899, Alistair locked himself away in a remote estate house, following a ritual from a dark and forbidden book said to grant divine power. For weeks, he fasted, prayed, and waited for a sign. But then, without warning, he abandoned the process, leaving candles still burning and altars half prepared. He would encounter something so disturbing that he fled, never finishing what he started. But it wasn't just Alistair who suffered. Strange events followed him and those around him. The estate's caretaker, Hugh Gillies, suffered a series of misfortunes, losing multiple children and enduring unexplained tragedies. Locals whispered that something had been unleashed in the Boleskine House, something that lingered long after Alistair had gone. Those who knew him swore he was never the same. Some believe he failed to complete the ritual, others say something else, something unseen, completed it for him. This is a story about the Book of Abramelin, the forbidden book with a dark history, said to destroy lives. So if you dare, listen on. After Alistair abandoned the ritual, strange rumors followed him. But he wasn't the first to try and fail. The book he was using wasn't just any text. The Book of Abramelin, a manuscript allegedly written in the 1400s, was said to contain knowledge far older, possibly dating back to the 12th century. It was the life work of Abraham of Worms, a German Jewish mystic and alchemist who traveled extensively in search of divine wisdom. He claimed that during his time in Egypt, he encountered a sage known as Abramelin the Mage. This person revealed to him a secret so powerful that it had to be hidden from the world. The book outlines a grueling, dangerous ritual known as the Abramelin Operation, a months-long process of purification, prayer, and isolation. The goal? To achieve direct contact with a holy guardian angel, a divine entity meant to guide the practitioner for the rest of their life. But it also promised something else: absolute power over demons, spirits, and unseen forces. Many who sought the book were already part of secret occult orders, such as the Rosicrucians, the Hermeticists, and later the infamous Golden Dawn, which would bring the text into the hands of figures like Samuel Mathers and eventually Alistair. Some saw it as a pathway to enlightenment, others as a tool for ultimate control. But the warnings were severe. The book stated clearly if the ritual is not completed, the practitioner risks complete spiritual ruin. Failure means losing control, not just of the ritual, but of one's mind and soul. Some believe that once the process begins, there's no turning back. Those who failed were said to suffer unexplained illnesses, madness, and misfortune if they survived at all. The Abramelin operation is not a simple invocation of a brief occult experiment. It's an ordeal, a test of absolute will. Over the course of a 6-month period to a year, the initiate must follow rigid, unbreakable rules. They must isolate themselves, performing fasting, meditating, and precise daily invocations. Every morning and evening, they must pray, burn offerings, and cleanse their body and spirit. The purpose? To strip away weakness, purge the soul of impurities, and make direct contact with the holy guardian angel themselves, a divine being that will unlock true spiritual enlightenment. But the ultimate reward of this ritual isn't just enlightenment. It is power, absolute power. If performed perfectly, the practitioner will gain control, total control, over spirits and demons, granting them supernatural influence, spiritual knowledge, secret knowledge, and mastery over fate itself. According to the text, this is the closest a human being can possibly come to the power of a true God. However, this power comes with a dire condition. The ritual must be completed in full, without any deviation or failure. Those who fail, whether through distraction, lack of discipline, or abandoning the process, are left exposed to the very forces they sought to control. The influence of the guardian angel never arrives. Instead, the practitioner is left alone with the entities they have summoned, unable to command them and unable to drive them away. The Book of Abramelin warns that the spirits will never leave willingly. And throughout history, the book's instructions have lured mystics, occultists, and secret societies, many of whom paid a terrible price. And one of the most famous among them was Alistair. At the turn of the 20th century, Alistair retreated to a house in Scotland, determined to complete the ritual. He followed the process: strict fasting, prayer, and isolation. But then, without explanation, he would have to abandon this operation, the very thing the text warned against doing. And those who knew him said he was never the same again. And you may know this person, Alistair, by another name, Aleister Crowley, one of the most infamous occultists in history, the man who called himself the Great Beast. But even he couldn't finish the Abramelin operation. If you like creepy stories like this and other fascinating and obscure history, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date for our latest episodes. Please don't forget to like or drop a comment and let us know what you think so far. All right, let's move on. Aleister Crowley, often hailed as the godfather of the modern occult, was a man driven by unrelenting desire to master the occult arts. By the late 19th century, Crowley had already gained membership in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, an influential occult society, and he began to build his reputation as a prodigy of magic. Yet, it was the Book of Abramelin that intrigued him above all else. A book that promised access to ultimate power, but required unwavering dedication, stretching over months of solitude, fasting, and ritual purification. Unlike the quick invocations that Crowley was accustomed to, this ritual demanded absolute commitment. And in 1899, Crowley visited the Boleskine House, an isolated estate nestled on the banks of Loch Ness in Scotland. The house, remote and silent, offered the perfect environment for the Abramelin operation, which required complete isolation. Inside the house, he shut himself off from the world and began following the ritual's exacting process: prayers, incantations, fasting, and invocations. For weeks, nothing happened, until one night during the advanced stage of the ritual, something changed. Crowley was performing an intense invocation, hoping to summon his holy guardian angel, finally complete the ritual's last steps. But something went wrong. Candles flickered, and the atmosphere in the room thickened. A feeling of dread washed over Crowley. Feeling an overwhelming sense of terror, abruptly he left the ritual chamber, abandoning the rite mid-process. He fled to the Boleskine House in haste, leaving the ritual unfinished, never having completed the summoning, never having banished the spirits he had already invoked. Crowley never spoke of what happened that night, but it's widely believed that something unseen happened. Something so terrifying it left Crowley shaken to his core. Those close to him noticed the change. Paranoia set in, and he became erratic, obsessed with dark forces he couldn't control. His descent was swift and total. Crowley spiraled into addiction, to heroin, to opium, until he lost his wealth, and eventually, by the end of his life, he was penniless and consumed by the belief that dark forces had never left him. Meanwhile, Boleskine House took on a life of its own. Servants refused to stay in the house, whispering of shadowy figures, unexplained noises, and a constant oppressive presence. Those who followed Crowley reported an unsettling aura surrounding the house, claiming it was haunted by the unfinished ritual. One of the most chilling accounts come from the estate's caretaker, Hugh Gillies. He later claimed his life fell into ruins after Crowley's departure. Gillies' children died under mysterious circumstances, and he was plagued by relentless misfortunes. Locals believe that Crowley left a door open, one that had never been properly closed. And as the years passed, the Boleskine House became notorious, with reports of fires, deaths, and suicides tied to the property. The growing rumors led to the speculation that Crowley's unfinished ritual had left something behind, something unseen and waiting. Some believe that Crowley summoned the dark spirit meant to be sent back, but when he abandoned that ritual, the spirit lingered and subsisted. Was it merely paranoia, or had Crowley, by stopping the ritual prematurely, unleashed something real? The mystery surrounding the Boleskine House remains a testament to the dangers of diving into the deep occult, even when the smallest misstep might release forces far beyond one's control. If you guys are enjoying stories about cursed books, drop a comment and let me know and I'll do more of it. Also, if you don't mind sharing this episode with somebody, it really helps us grow. So we're going to move on, because this book didn't just affect Crowley. It affected other people who crossed his path. And it's hard to say exactly what happened to Alistair that night, but we do know that the curse didn't stop there. And a man named Samuel Little McGregor Mathers the person who translated the book from German to English met an equally dark fate. Now, Mathers was a founding member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and he was the one who first translated the Book of Abramelin. He believed the text was the ultimate key to true magical power. But those around him noticed something changing as he worked on it. Over time, he became reclusive, paranoid, convinced that unseen forces were conspiring against him. After publishing the book, his life completely fell apart. The Golden Dawn fractured, turning against him. He was accused of practicing dangerous, uncontrollable magic, and he died penniless and alone, convinced to his last breath that invisible enemies were hunting him. Did Mathers reveal something that was never meant to be shared? Or was he simply another victim of the book's curse? The Book of Abramelin continues to captivate modern occultists. Despite fewer reports of downfalls like those seen with Crowley and Mathers, today it's still seen as one of the most profound texts for achieving spiritual enlightenment and magical power. In the 21st century, the ritual is popular among ceremonial and chaos magicians, requiring long periods of isolation, fasting, and purification. The intense commitment makes it a challenging journey that can strain both the mind and spirit. A major development for modern occultism came in 2006 when Stephen Skinner and David Rankin translated the Book of Abramelin into English. Their version includes extensive commentary, making the ritual more accessible for contemporary practitioners or scholars. Interestingly though, neither one of them seemed to suffer ill effects after translating the book. And the book does remain a key text in online occult communities, where practitioners share their experiences. However, many caution that the ritual's psychological impact, hallucinations, or psychic disturbances should not be underestimated, and mental preparation is crucial. So basically, in short, don't try this at home. So even in modern times, people are still trying to leverage this book to, see themselves into power. Maybe it worked for a few, hard to say. But whether this book is actually cursed, it's hard to say. But there sure is a lot of theories surrounding what this book is and exactly what it's causing. Now, the ritual outlined in the Book of Abramelin demands absolute isolation, fasting, and intense focus, up to a period of a year. Now, it's easy to see how these extreme conditions could push someone to their breaking point. Weeks without social interaction, coupled with ritualistic chanting and deprivation. This could have severe and long-lasting, possibly permanent effects on the mind. Crowley, Mathers, and countless unknown practitioners may have fallen victim to their own obsession. When someone devotes themselves entirely to something so intense, it's not hard to imagine their mind creating the horrors they fear. Now, psychologically, in extreme isolation, the brain can manufacture sensations, voices, figures, and even malevolent presences as a response basically to sensory deprivation. The paranoia experienced by the practitioners, including Crowley, and reports of unseen forces may not be supernatural, but instead the consequences of essentially prolonged psychological stress. Studies in sensory deprivation and the effects of isolation, such as John C. Lilly's work with isolation tanks, suggest that the mind is highly susceptible to distortion under these conditions. In fact, the hallucination proneness theory highlights how the brain fills in gaps with perceptual distortions. Crowley's experiences may have been the result of a psychological breakdown rather than a true supernatural phenomenon. This theory, as interesting as it is, doesn't quite explain what happened to others around the book. Some would go on to claim that the Book of Abramelin isn't just a psychological test. It really is a gateway to something more paranormal. The ritual's instructions closely resemble demonic summonings from other grimoires, like the Key of Solomon and the Lesser Key of Solomon. These texts written during the Renaissance contain precise chants, strict purification rites, and warnings that failing to complete the ritual can result in disastrous consequences. If spirits and unseen force exist, then abandoning the ritual, as Crowley did, could leave a practitioner vulnerable to the entities they've invoked. In Crowley's case, he never finished the ritual. Was that the reason behind his spiraling decline? The bizarre tragedies surrounding the Boleskine House where Crowley conducted the ritual only seemed to deepen the mystery. Servants reported strange occurrences. The later owners claimed to have encounters with ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomenon, and modern occultists have similarly described the experiences of psychic disturbances and hallucinations surrounding the book. Crowley's unexplainable paranoia coupled with Boleskine's reputation, suggests that it is a possibility he released something from a world we don't want to know about. However far-fetched that might seem to most of us, there is people out there that believe this, like, unquestionably. Now, this theory, which I kind of lend myself to a little bit, is that this book and the lore around it and the belief in it creates a type of placebo effect where Alistair doesn't finish the ritual, and by not doing that, he convinces himself that there's spirits that are out to get him because he didn't finish it, and just kind of becomes this twisted up thing and cycle in his brain that just leads to his mental downfall. Essentially, there was nothing that happened ever that night other than what he created in his mind. The brain's a pretty powerful tool. So I could see how you could get it all twisted up and kind of become paranoid and slowly cause your own demise, regardless of whether the book actually had power or not. Just like with the Voynich manuscript, it's another mysterious book that's been unsolved for about 600 years with types of writing that nobody's ever recognized, has plants not from this planet, and looks to be directions for possibly alchemy and some weird rituals. Doesn't seem to hold magic necessarily, but people around that book have tried to solve it to the point of essentially driving themselves crazy and destroying their lives. And if you want to see that video, click the link. But essentially, a book holds a lot of power, especially a forbidden or a strange book like this, when there's so much lore and so much belief attached to it. I can see how it can create a placebo effect and essentially cause someone to spiral into madness that is backed up with absolutely zero proof. So there, yeah, that's that. And adjacent to the placebo effect is actually something I learned about researching this, is that throughout history, belief alone has been enough to drive people into madness, right? So it can cause physical symptoms and even death. But surrounding a curse, there's actually something called the nocebo effect. And now this phenomenon is essentially the opposite of the placebo effect, where simply believing you are cursed can cause real harm. So when people begin the Abramelin operation, experiencing something supernatural to happen, their minds may start manufacturing experiences. They could experience strange coincidences, hallucinations, and misfortunes, all what they end up essentially attributing to the ritual going wrong. This belief could reinforce the feeling that they're being cursed or followed by spirits, even though the true cause is purely psychological. This is very similar to kind of like a confirmation bias. But yeah, so the placebo and nocebo, whatever one you want to go with, kind of has the same result. Attributes basically a psychological demise purely of the practitioner's doing. So it's not completely out there, and it might be a more kind of grounded explanation as to what happens to people that get caught up with this book. But again, with each one of these theories, none of it's backed by real hard evidence. So again, it leaves us with this deep and kind of unnerving mystery about ancient texts, about books, about curses. And it makes me wonder that, like everything, if there's not a little bit of truth to this, ultimately, whether or not a curse is caused by a supernatural force or kind of a mass psychosis that happens surrounding an object, it doesn't really matter. If everyone's just convincing themselves that their life's falling apart and then engages in a cycle of self-fulfilling behavior towards that prophecy, the result's the same. So it doesn't really matter if the curse is real or not. I advise caution to anybody that wants to try this kind of stuff themselves. And I really mean that, because this stuff is still out there today. You can get a copy of this book online. As we speak, it's been published, it's out there. So just don't do it. Don't do it. That's all I'm going to say. But if you do, and it works, and you come to power, and you're like the king of the world, fucking give me a shout out, bro. Tell someone about the podcast, right? But what I will say is that the Book of Abramelin has existed for 600-700 years. There's so many stories surrounding this thing, and some are still trying to solve this ritual today. And those who understand the full history of this book truly warn against reading it. Whether this book actually leads to divine power, or it's a trap designed to break those who sought forbidden knowledge, one thing we do know is that a lot of people paid the price, as a lot of people's downfall happened after coming into contact with it. And now I'm curious, if you do have the choice to gain ultimate power, but risk losing yourself forever, would you try and do it? Let me know in the comments, and we'll see you guys again next week. Thanks.